Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is from chapter 311. Chapter 311. The movements of the Russian and French armies during the campaign from Moscow back to the Niemen were like those in a game of Russian blind man's bluff, in which two players are blindfolded, and one of them occasionally rings a little bell to inform the catcher of his whereabouts. First, he rings the bell fearlessly. But when he gets into a tight place, he runs away as quietly as he can, and often thinking to escape, runs straight into his opponent's arms. At first, while they were still moving along the Kaluga road, Napoleon's armies made their presence known. But later, when they reached the Smolensk road, they ran holding the clapper of their bell tight, and often thinking they were escaping, ran right into the Russians. Owing to the rapidity of the French flight and the Russian pursuit and the consequent exhaustion of the horses, the chief means of approximately ascertaining the enemy's position by cavalry scouting was not available. Besides, as a result of the frequent and rapid change of position by each army, even what information was obtained could not be delivered in time. If news was received one day that the enemy had been in a certain position the day before, by the third day, when something could have been done, that army was already 2 days' march farther on, and in quite another position. One army fled, and the other pursued. Beyond Smolensk, there were several different roads available for the French, and one would have thought that during their stay of 4 days they might have learned where the enemy was, might have arranged some more advantageous plan, and undertaken something new. But after a 4 days' halt, the mob, with no maneuvers or plans, again began running along the beaten track, neither to the right nor to the left, but along the old, the worst road, through Krasno and Orsha. Expecting the enemy from behind and not in front, the French separated in their flight and spread out over a distance of 24 hours. In front of them all fled the emperor, then the kings, then the dukes. The Russian army, expecting Napoleon to take the road to the right beyond the Dnieper, which was the only reasonable thing for him to do, themselves turned to the right and came out onto the high road at Krasno. And here, as in a game of blind man's bluff, the French ran into our vanguard. Seeing their enemy unexpectedly, the French fell into confusion and stopped short from the sudden fright. But then they resumed their flight, abandoning their comrades who were further behind. Then for 3 days, separate portions of the French army, first Murat, the vice-kings, then Devos, and then Ney's, ran, as it were, the gauntlet of the French army. They abandoned one another, abandoned all their heavy baggage, their artillery, and half their men, and fled, getting past the Russians by night by making semicircles to the right. Ney, who came last, had been busying himself blowing up the walls of Smolensk, which were in nobody's way, because despite the unfortunate plight of the French, or because of it, they wished to punish the floor against which they had hurt themselves. Ney, who had had a corps of 10,000 men, reached Napoleon at Orsha with only 1,000 men left, having abandoned all the rest and all his cannon, and having crossed the Dnieper at night by stealth at a wooded spot. From Orsha they fled farther along the road to Vilna, still playing at blind man's bluff with the pursuing army. At the Berezina, they again became disorganized. Many were drowned, and many surrendered. But those who got across the river fled farther. Their supreme chief donned a fur coat, and having seated himself in a sleigh, galloped on alone, abandoning his companions. The others, who could do so drove away too, leaving those who could not to surrender or die. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 311 of War and Peace. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A year of war and peace, day 311. Lives hastening, turning in a whirlwind. The iniquities and caprices of human existence are favorite topics of a year of war and peace. We once considered, for example, author Schopenhauer's thought that if we are to judge whether pleasure truly outweighs the pain in life, as so many misguided souls would have it, then all we need to do is compare the respective feelings of two animals, one of which is engaged in eating the other. Seneca the Younger, not to be outdone by the lowly Germanic barbarian, composed an entire fabula crepidata on the subject of the tempestuous whims of fortune, wherein a wronged man obtains revenge on his brother by first slaughtering his brother's children, and then serving their sautéed remains to him at a banquet. This, of course, is the tale of Thyestes. His story is that of a man who once sat high upon a throne with the entire world under his thumb, only to see himself reduced to a guest's table with his sons at the end of his fork. Hard is the Thyestrian fate of the French army in these recent chapters. They once marched as conquerors, now they flee as the vanquished. Their flight is confused and hasty and greeted on all sides by the predations of aggrieved Russian forces. One general, Ney, sees his corps diminished by 90%. Those who do not escape the Russians are left either to surrender or die. Harsh. Remember, then, Thyestes and the French, and their fortunes made and unmade. Daily meditation. Rising day sees a man in pride. Retreating day sees him brought low. No one should trust too much in success. No one despair of misfortune improving. Clotho mixes the two, forbidding fortune to rest, and spins each destiny around. No one has enjoyed such favoring gods that he could promise himself the morrow. God keeps our lives hastening, turning in a speeding whirlwind. Seneca, Thyestes. All right, that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 311 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the description. Also down there in the description, you'll find links to my Amazon wish list for books and movies. If you purchase one of those to support my work, you will, we can set up a Zoom call to discuss that book or that movie. Any way you decide to support me would be much appreciated. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 312. I hope you'll join me. Take care of yourselves and others.